the people say for 25 years now, they're working at different line or FGD and find there before moving to resource. If you want just about 8 years ago, get in-depth knowledge of all elements of value of moving and service of the PPE require and the two services implement of international European and UK standards of committees level. It will contain of the European standards in Turkey and bring protective clothing and it's also the project leader for the development and publication of ISO standard cleaning, inspection and repair of fighting PPEs. In total, we understand that development will focus on care and maintenance. Okay, that's what it was.
Okay, thank you very much, and thanks to Intoxify for inviting me to speak. So the areas I want to cover today, do a brief introduction to myself, talk about the standards process, background to the development of ISO 23616, which is the international standard for cleaning, inspection and repair of firefighters' PPE. We've got a question section at the end, but I guess that will lead into the panel discussion. So brief bit of information about me. I know there was a bio just before. So I've been in the industry over 20 years, it's approaching 25. Throughout that time, I've worked for organisations that have done care and maintenance of top-to-toe PPE. Regarding standards, I've been involved with standards, started with British standards in about 15 years ago, moved on to into European and international standards. I'm currently convener of the European Committee CENTEC 162 Working Group 2, which is heat and flame protective clothing. So Sheila talked about EN 469. That standard sits within my committee. That standard is currently under revision. Gavin spoke about flashers. Again, the European standards are currently under revision. I was appointed joint project leader for the development of ISO 23616, and then moved on to being project leader during the first revision of that standard. So if we talk about the standards process, and I don't know what people know in the room around the standards, so it comes to kind of 3 levels of standards. You've got national standards and national standards bodies. So in the UK, it's BSI. Over here, it's NSAI. Germany is DIN. You've got Standards Australia, as the name would suggest in Australia. You've got ANSI for the US. So each of those standards bodies can have their own standards, which are just local. You then go into regional standards. So as I said, I'm convener of a European committee. So they're the CEN standards. Currently, there are 34 members of CEN. People think, oh, CEN, that's just the EU, but it's broader than the EU. So UK are still full members of CEN. You've got countries like Switzerland as well, which is not part of the EU. In addition to the European standards, you've got US standards, which is organised by the NFPA, National Fire Protection Association. In Australia and New Zealand, you've got either Australian standards or joint Australian-New Zealand standards. So some standards are jointly created, others are just separate to either Australia or New Zealand. And then you've got ISO standards. So that's an attempt to have an international standard that covers all nations. Whether it works or not is an interesting question, because most nations want their own standards. But if you haven't got standards committees really in the nation, then ISO standards can be used. One of the main ones that's certainly used across Europe is something like ISO 20471, which is for high visibility clothing. So a bit of background to the development of ISO 23616. So as I already said, ISO 23616 is a standard for the inspection, cleaning and repair of firefighters' PPE. It covers all elements of PPE, not just clothing. Some of the background, in the NFPA committee, 1851 was first published in 2001. It was already recognised at that stage there were risks of carcinogens for firefighters. 1851 is a selection, use, care and maintenance standard with a lot of focus around the care and maintenance. Within the European Committee, back in 2013, it was already identified cancer was a risk to firefighters. and it was felt certainly by the convener at that time, a gentleman called Dave Matthews, who a lot of people will probably know. He instigated a project group led by Dag Skasketh from Norway, looking at firefighter cancers. It was too important for the European Committee not to have some kind of focus on it. In the following couple of years, there were 2 guidance documents issued just to start the education process, to try and get people to be aware of the risks to firefighters. Within Europe, following that, we looked at trying, and I say we because I was involved with the committee, and I was actually secretary from 2019 until I took over as convener in 2024. So in the European Committee, we actively tried to introduce some kind of care and maintenance standard. There were, on at least 2 occasions, we tried to raise it within the European Committee. We didn't get any kind of consensus. It was knocked back both times. At that stage, I'm certainly not aware there was anything outside of the US, at that point, it was NFPA 1851, the 2014 standard. So in the UK, we started a project to develop our own standard. So that's BS 8617. Started in, as it says on the screen, started in 2017, published in 2019, and more or less in parallel, following year, ISO 23616 development started from scratch. I was project leader or joint project leader at that time. So that's the British standard 8617. As you can see, personal protective equipment, cleaning, maintenance. Oh, I think I missed one there. Excuse me. Or something's missed out on the slide. Sorry. Going the wrong way. So that's the British standard 8617. So it's cleaning, maintenance, repair, code of practice. It was a code of practice document, which was, as I say, published in 2019. So that was the first document outside of the NFPA standard. Following on from that is the ISO standard 23616, which was published in 2022. And as you can see, cleaning, inspection and repair. Said earlier, ISO 23616 covers all elements of PPE. So clothing, helmets, gloves, hoods, boots, and respiratory protection. Now, we included respiratory protection as a grouping, but the focus is on SCBA. There are split responsibilities within the standard. I'll come on to that on the next slide, but they're responsibilities of the individuals, of the wearers. But there's also responsibility of the organisation as well. And it then also covers both routine activities, so things that can be done every day, would possibly be done at the fire station, and advanced activities as well. I'm not one for putting things on the slide that you then just read straight off, but I thought this was too important not to put on there. So these are extracts from the current introduction to the current version of ISO 23616. And it's important to say it's the responsibility of the firefighter, both when they get the kit and ongoing, to undertake regular inspections of their PPE, and there should be a reliable system and mechanism, including training, to ensure that this can be achieved efficiently. And linked to that is the document also provides instructions and guidance to fire and rescue services regarding more advanced cleaning, inspection and repair. So there's distinct responsibilities both for firefighters and for the organisation. The firefighter responsibility should be driven by the organisation though. So what is 23616? It's effectively a management system at this stage. It's a document that is constantly under revision. When I say a management system, currently there's nothing in there that is physically measurable. So we talk about showing evidence of being able to clean, but at this point in time, we've not got anything in there that you can measure. with the publication of the 2024 standard, I went to two notified bodies to say to them, look, we need you to have a program where you can independently audit organisations to say that they are performing in line with the standard. The potential business would be massive. I'm not aware of any organisation anywhere in the world that can actually independently audit to that standard. You may have individuals who are accredited by those organisations who can audit you, but you don't get a certificate from that notified body. So the structure of the standard starts off with some general requirements. It talks in general about inspection process, cleaning process, drying process, repair process at a very high level. But then it goes into each individual item and goes into greater detail as to what needs to happen, both at a routine level and at an advanced level. The important element on that is it should be following manufacturer's instructions. If you haven't got the manufacturer's instructions, then 23616 gives you some pointers as to say, these are the steps to take. So as I say, key element is those doing those activities have to be trained. I've touched upon manufacturer's instructions is important. Guidance in there is that you should have at least annual advanced inspection and cleaning of all items of PPE, with a caveat of if it's been used. If it's not been used, if let's say you're a senior officer and you've got PPE, but you haven't put it on, then that's less important. But before any use, it should be inspected. And as I said earlier on, also covers the efficacy of cleaning. And again, I want to focus on it's all elements, not just clothing. I know clothing is very much a focus, but if you don't clean your SCBA, that's going to be probably a bigger hazard than your turnout gear. Which brings me to my final slide, and I know it's quite short, which hopefully fits in with the schedule. The efficacy part of it. There is currently nothing in the standard. The only standard that has any kind of measurable efficacy is the NFPA standard. 1851 has recently become NFPA 1850. As an organisation, I've been through the process of getting approved to that standard. It's not straightforward. It's time consuming and it's complicated, but it's the only way you can actually prove that you are cleaning. And that's, again, it's just turnout gear that I'm talking about on that one. In the standards world, what we've done is we've created an ad hoc group to look at how can we introduce some form of measurable efficacy of cleaning. Talking about top-to-toe PPE here, the initial focus will be on clothing because at least there's something already out there on clothing. We have our next meeting. So again, I'm project leader on that one. We have a meeting in June where we will look at it further. I've got some input from some colleagues from a task group that we will be discussing and seeing, can we introduce that into 23616? If we've got something that is meaningful that we can add, then the likelihood is that we'll go into revision of the standard so that we can then take it to the next level. Already mentioned NFPA 1850, which took over from 1851. And again, next steps will be trying to update 23616 to have something measurable in there. And we will continue the work, because if we put something in for clothing, then how do you measure, are the boots clean? Are the helmets clean? You might have wiped a helmet down with a decontaminant wipe, but is it really clean? What about the inside of the helmet? So there's huge work to do. But as John already said, this is a journey, and we're not necessarily going to solve everything today or next week or next year, but we've got to continue on that journey. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Rachel. Yeah. Could I invite all the speakers? Maybe just here we have the panel